Alright guys, it's a beautiful day out here, so I figured I'd come down to Camp Chase and film a little bit around here. Here's the marker outside the camp. As you can see, it's in the middle of the city here. Here's what the gate looks like as you walk up to it. Camp Chase, Confederate Cemetery, U.S. Government Reservation. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It's in 1973. I don't know who that is, but let's see. Walk up in here. Here's the cemetery enclosure itself with all the gravestones, and in the center here we have this monument. It says Americans up there if you can't see it. Statue on the top. And we got this stone. It says 2,260 Confederate soldiers of the war, 1861 to 1865, buried in this enclosure. That seems like a compromise to me, of the part where they say of the war. I know reading up on this that this was a Union veteran got together with some Confederate veterans to make sure that those they could identify that they would get markers buried, but mostly make sure that the soldiers that died here were taken care of properly. And you know, depending on what side of the war you're on, you call it different things. If you're from the North or the fighting part of the Union, you would call it the Civil War. But if you were from the South, you would call it the War of Secession, or later on they morphed into the Lost Cause. But so there was a compromise here. Nobody wanted to kind of disregard the other side, so they just called it the War of 1861 to 1865. So it's a interesting aspect here. You can see stones here. And of the ones, though, gives the name, company they were from, what unit they were from. So this one, R.H. Hitt, is from Company D, or Delta Company, of the 36th Alabama Regiment. I'd heard that they transferred most of the officers out of here, that this was mostly for enlisted soldiers or NCOs. So let's see if we can't find some officers in here. Might have been fully transferred over. Here's a Confederate cannonball fired at the Battle of Vicksburg, Mississippi, 1863. An idea, that thing's about the size of a basketball. Yeah, I mean, a little bit smaller, and that's pretty solid. I couldn't imagine what would happen if that were to hit you. Go through you pretty quick, I would assume. But looking around the stones here, I don't see many. These are mostly what I would consider just regular soldiers. I'm not seeing any actual officers or anything. They're from a lot of different units. It'd be interesting to kind of trace some of these units to find out when they were captured. Although, from one of my trips here before, we'll head back here to the back, because I do actually know where the officers are. They're back there by the maintenance shed in the porta potty. I think anybody that's served in the military as a soldier would appreciate the officers being buried back there. Nothing against them. Sorry, this one just caught my eye. It's got Company E, North Carolina Regiment. There's the 6th Florida Regiment, 7th Battalion, Northern Mississippi Infantry. They're getting pretty specific down there. But yeah, I'm seeing them from all units all over. I mean, Virginia, Alabama, North Carolina. These are the ones I can never really figure out. H. Cowman, citizen. How did you end up here? If you were a citizen, what would have gotten you imprisoned here? But the actual markers that I found that were very interesting were back here in this corner. I'll show you which ones I'm talking about. Oh, let's see. So these stones right here have some interesting, because first of all let me see if I can get a camera on them. They're doubly marked, so there's two individuals for each stone. As you can see at the top, there's a captain, just out of an Alabama regiment. Doesn't give a specific one. But then below it, we've got a chaplain from the 4th Mississippi Regiment. And then as we move over to this one, next to it, sorry, the ground's a little uneven here, so I gotta kind of hold the camera. We have a 2nd Lieutenant, W.T. Abernathy, from the 32 Tennessee Regiment, 32nd Tennessee Regiment, and a 4th Corporal, H.P. Early, Company G of the 26th Mississippi Regular Regiment. So I'm not sure why those two would be put on those stones together. They're not even from the same unit. So it's kind of interesting. And so here we have, it doesn't even give the individual's rank at the top. And assistant, I don't know what COMC is of, and of the 3rd Tennessee Regiment. So I'm not sure what's here. Now we have a surgeon here. So we have a surgeon. And then we have a 2nd Lieutenant underneath them. Again, from totally different regiments. So I don't know if this was a separation of the officers and what would be considered above and enlisted people over here. I'm not sure. This is the one that's really interesting, and I did a little research on this one. So at the top we have Major and Administrative Assistant to General Alex Cassidy of Buckner's staff, and 3rd Lieutenant of Company D of the 53rd Tennessee Regiment. I looked up Buckner, and actually Buckner surrendered at Fort Donelson when early in the war to Grant, and his command, General Pillow, abandoned him overnight in fear of being captured. So in the morning he had no choice. Well, he knew Grant personally, so he reached out to him to get terms of surrender, and that was probably I don't know if it's the first time, but Grant came back with his usual unconditional surrender, which Buckner did. And kind of a funny note, he asked where General Pillow was, the one that abandoned him, and he said, well, he left because he's afraid of what Grant would do when he caught him. And Grant said, well, I'll let him go based on what he did here. He's a great general. He's really good work for us. So Buckner was brought back here, and I'm assuming this major was part of his staff. But Buckner was later, he was a part of a prisoner swap. So he got out of federal custody and went back to the Confederacy. But apparently here, one of his staff members died and was imprisoned here. So, just an interesting side note of the little rabbit trails you can go down when you look at, when you study some of these stones. But I thought that one really jumped out at me because he was probably I think he is the highest ranking at least one that's marked here that I've seen. And for them to call out Buckner's staff specifically, give you a little bit of an idea where to go. But yeah, I mean, you're seeing here mostly there's lieutenants, first lieutenant, second lieutenant. Here's a captain. But yeah, I think more importantly, it's finding out what these units are and maybe where they got captured and what particular engagement they got captured. Maybe some of the conditions. That one was a little easier to find, to piece together what might have happened. Now, I don't know specifically what happened to that major, but I know what happened to Buckner's unit and how he was swapped back, and for them to call that out specifically on that stone is interesting, that he was on the staff. So my guess is he was probably the highest guy left after they transferred Buckner out, the highest officer left remaining. So they knew specifically about him when he passed on and were able to put a marker up for him. And that would make sense with a lot of the officers, because you would want to separate them and get as much information from them as you could. Because they might be a little more privy to all the plans, especially somebody on a general staff. But yeah, it's all the stones. As you can see, it's right here in the middle of the city. Catholic school back there. And, if you want to go to the website, you can read all of this stuff, but I like this part here. It talks about, it was, that they created a Confederate section in the National Cemetery later, and it's pretty much the veterans from both the Union and the Confederacy got together just to make sure that everybody was honored the way they should be, regardless of their political affiliations. Yeah, and I like the compromise up here of Americans. I mean, that's the way we should look at it. There was some controversy. A statue was torn down in 2017 and the head was taken from it, but you can see it's replaced. And it's back up and running. Let's see, I don't know, is that the knot of a tree or is there a wreath hung over here? I think it's the knot of a tree. Yeah, it is. But there's the... and you can see the markers are pretty thick over there on that side, and they're pretty thin as you get over to this side. And I don't know what the reason for that is. I don't know if the markers over there were just... because, I mean, I can't... it would be hard to imagine this is 2,260 grave markers. I could think maybe 1,000. But, so they didn't know everybody that died here. So I think what happened was they've just put markers up as they've figured out who died here and was potentially buried here. And potentially those in the back might have been markers that they knew right away and they'd installed. And these are ones that have come later. So they've come, but I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily true. For the pure fact of the matter is, look at these poor little stones here. Are just, right next to this tree. And this one on the other side, look how big that tree is. On the other side, so that tree is kind of grown up around those stones. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. I thought I'd stop back in here, do another video. and I had found out more about that grave that I'd seen over there of the Major. And, a little bit more, I thought a little bit more about that, the engraving on the boulder over there, and, what that actually meant. So we're going to head on out of here, and we'll head on over to down the Ohio Erie Trail and look at some other areas there. See you then.